Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you as always. Mamprugu, good evening to you, Sati Mudima, and good evening to you, Ghanaians, and of course, the world. The Mamprugu prayer. Lord, you are our strength, you are our truth, you are our power, and you are our wisdom. May we dwell upon you and your glory and love and rebuild Boku. May we learn, remember, and share your words, truth, peace, and nonviolence, and follow your ways all of our days. Lord, you go on ahead and prepare the way for us. May we obey you with confidence, faith, and truth. You make a way for us where there seemed no way. May we remain faithful to you and never lack wisdom, shelter, good health, and daily bread. May generations after us build upon the foundation our forefathers laid for the construction of Boku, the land of Nagbewa and his sons, the Nayiri of Mamprugu. May I, your servant, trust you always. Ladies and gentlemen, this is yours truly, Dubia Mbawuni Bakutuma na Atabia II, the youth president. Tonight, our topic is titled Two Asantehene, One Boku, Facts and Contradiction. Happy New Year to you all, our cherished viewers across the globe. We appreciate you. We will continue to represent you as the voice of Mamprugu. Tonight, we're going to continue with our discussion on the Asantehene Mediation Report. The continuation is going to be on a scrutiny of the mediation report. Asantehene on the 16th of December last year met the president and a couple of national leaders and presented to them what he believed to be a mediation report that he led and prepared himself. However, the more I listen to Asantehene, the more I have questions to ask. The more I listen to Asantehene's report, the more I see unprofessionalism and unethical conduct in the mediation report, and in effect, the manner in which he handled the mediation. This is not an attack on Asantehene's personality, but it is a scrutiny of his work. And like the president of the Republic of Ghana and every citizen, Asantehene is not above the law. Asantehene is not above criticism. Asantehene is not wiser than anybody. Asantehene's work is not necessarily perfect. So wherever Asantehene goes wrong, whatever he does wrong, we need as citizens of Ghana to point it out to him and Ghanaians for that matter. Let me use this opportunity also to appeal to Mamprugu youth to remain peaceful, remain calm, remain prayerful, and be law-abiding. Let's continue to support the Nayiri. Let's continue to support our leaders and encourage them to continue their hard work. It is not easy. And of course, those of us who want to be the voices of the people, let's do that responsibly so that we will not be on the wrong side of the law. We already know that there's an intimidation going on, my dear brothers and sisters. On that note, I will start with a video from the lawyer of Nashirga. So let's listen to what he said to the media today, ladies and gentlemen? Let's start our discussion from that.
We all know who sent him there. So if you first and Baba said you have to be like, the only one who can give it access. Look, let's start this with the protocols, right? No, I don't want to go to the merits, but I want to deal with just well, not just, let's deal with the human being. Okay, he's human. He has a family. So, and not just an ordinary family. We all know who sent him there. So if you pick such a person, what I'm saying is that our protocols will demand that, number one, at least you send a delegation, a message to the Nairi that, oh, this man, like I'm this man because I don't want to go into the merits. You put him up. We have taken him. He is here. As we speak today, the Nairi, the overlord of the Mampusi kingdom, he's not being informed where this is said Barbariga is. He's not being informed. And that one, you don't need a lawyer. That's the thing that beats my mind. That as a nation, we govern in such a disorderly manner. And I mentioned it. I'm not happy that the Minister of Interior hasn't reached out to him. I have to reach out to him that, oh, Chief, listen, despite everything, we've taken your son. We've kept him at this and this location. Anytime you need him, you can come. That has not been done. I think that shows a lot of disrespect. It's not good. We can't do that. We can't do that.
No, we know in the Otunfo mediation report, yeah, he was supposed to be removed, or he was supposed to leave Boko or stay there. Now, what you're telling us is that he's with the National Intelligence Bureau. Yeah. Is it in furtherance of that report, or as a criminal case that he's facing?
Say that again. So I have not been told. Okay, I've been his lawyer in times past. At least this is about the third or fourth case I'm doing for him. So as part of the protocols, even I would have said, okay, you said to see which lawyer have you dealt with in the past. Can we call him in? I have not been contacted. I expect that the state is a state that took him. So look for his lawyers. Or like I said, even if that is too much, at least basic, look for the Nairi. Look for the Nairi and inform him that, look, your son is here if you need him. But what they did was just look for his biological son. But say that Bariga doesn't belong to his biological son. Customarily, his biological, that is his son. He doesn't control him. Ask for those who have authority over him, his uncles, etc. So that's how you go to the Nairi. So there are protocols. Or simply, if you had looked for his lawyers, and I, not just look, I have said it previously, I sought to contact you. So there are protocols. Or simply, if you had looked for his lawyers, and I, not just look, I have said it previously, I sought to contact authorities. So I contacted Mutaka, Minister for Interior. He said he didn't see it early. By the time he came back, it was about 4 or 5 days earlier. Later, after we had come on air and complained that we felt his rights were being abused. And then after, I was being told to come through protocols, right to rise, etc. before I would see him. But that doesn't even solve it. Even if I wrote a letter, it doesn't solve the detention. The key thing we need now is that he be freed, because he's not been told of any, as far as I get second-hand information from Baba, he's not been told about any crime he's committed. And even if he had committed a crime, let's be very clear. You see, the Constitution is clear that if you arrest a person on grounds that he's committed an offense, right, within 48 hours, let's be very clear, within 48 hours, take that person to court so that the person too can apply for bail. Let's be very clear. Look, yes, that's the table number 4, the Attorney General number 4. Take the person to court. It's the judge who will then listen to the state, whether NIB, police, national security, or which other institution, and then listen to the suspect or the accused and his lawyers. Then the judge will make a determination. So let's be very clear. The fact, I'm not saying this particular case. So in law, even if Tachu Hansen was to pull a gun and shoot you to death, it doesn't mean because everybody here is on camera, you first seen people shooting Hansen, it means that you can just throw him into custody for any law. The law is that within 48 hours, take people to court, and then I will, through my lawyers, have something to say to apply for bail. Then we'll see where, don't take that for granted. Let's not think that, oh, but the evidence is clear. Hey, the evidence will not always be clear. There are reasons why we didn't start today. Even previously in the 1969 Constitution, it was 24 hours. 1969, if you read the 69 Constitution, if you arrested a person, you were to bring him to court within 24 hours. Today in Nigeria that we pride ourselves that we are better than them, they still have 24 hours. And we took ours back to 48. And now even 48 hours, we are breaching it. So let's fight for that. It doesn't matter. Even if you saw the crime with your own eyes, the law is that don't keep the person beyond 48 hours. Take the person to court. Let the judge listen to the two sides. The judge is supposed to be the impartial arbiter. Even though sometimes you may say, oh, once you see the gun, that one, over 90%, the person will not get bail within 48. Yes, but you go. The moment we want to use our own minds and say, oh, this one, the lala, he won't get bail, so we will not take it. It's wrong. Let the judge say so. Don't decide for the judge. That's what we are fighting for. If we don't protect Article 14 Clause 3, that's the way they will continue breaching it, and then it will come against us. You saw how eventually I was arrested. If years ago I hadn't come to court, several cases, you hear my people number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I'm sure the day the OSP arrested me, I probably would have been kept there far longer. So you also have a duty to push to make our society better.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the lawyer of Nashirga speaking to a section of the media. I'm not going to comment on it, but of course, I just want to share with you what transpired today regarding that. So let's leave it as it is and thank Martin Kebu and thank our leaders and all those who are having sleepless nights doing their best to make us happy. Let's all pray for them and thank them. All right, my dear brothers and sisters, sorry for the interruption. Sorry for interruption. My dear brothers and sisters, just give me a minute. Let me turn off my phone so that we can have a productive program. All right. Tonight, as I indicated earlier on, the topic is 2 Asante Henes, 1 Boko, Facts and Contradiction. Why 2 Asante Henes? When you study the history of the Boko chieftaincy dispute, starting from 1957 to 2025, let me put it that way, a couple of committees have been set up to go into the matter, of course, look at various issues. The National House of Chiefs committee have also been to Boko. At that time, the president of the National House of Chiefs was Otumfuo Opokuwari II. During his time, what happened? What were the facts? What were the recommendations? And now that we have Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the current Asante Hene, who happens to be a sole mediator on the Boko issues, what are some of his facts and findings? We'll do the two comparison. And then we'll find out what are some of the important facts that occurred during the time of Opokuwari II as National House of Chiefs, that the current Otumfuo Osei Tutu II deliberately decided to hide those facts from the president, to hide those facts from Ghanaians. Why did he do so? I can't answer that question, but my duty is to provide you the facts that Otumfuo Osei Tutu II deliberately refused to provide you. To do that, I will play a video of Otunfo Osetutu II giving his report. This is a short video, about 12 minutes video. I played it in my last program, but I'm going to play it again because I'm going to tackle a different angle from what I tackled in the previous discussion. So take your time, listen to the video, take your notes, and then we'll then do justice to that. After listening to it, and after making my analysis, we will then go back to 1983, 84, 85. What happened during the PNDC time? What happened when the National House of Chiefs were involved in this? We'll look into all that, my dear brothers and sisters. And of course, we will look into the so-called Pusga Naba, his misconduct. We'll look at, there's one gentleman, his bodyguard, who need to be arrested. We will also look at Mahama Ayaraga's conduct and then ask ourselves whether indeed Mahama Ayaraga would help Otunfo to get peace in Boku, or Mahama Ayaraga will continue to be who that we all know, my dear brothers and sisters. Now let's go straight to this.
It was an arbitration, and I'm not here, as I said, to say that this one was wrong or this one. I'll present the facts as they are, and that's what it should be binding on all of us, whoever is there. I've spoken to before I came yesterday, I was on the phone for more than with my brother, the Nairi, explaining the circumstances to him in terms of the decision I took. And I have spoken to the Bokunaba, taking time all these periods to be speaking to everybody about it. Yeah. So we have to read what I wrote so that everybody, my brother, the Nairi, and my son, the Bokunaba, will all know that that is exactly what I said. So it isn't the president who is doctoring anything. Yeah. At the commencement of the hostilities, the government of President Kufuor had issued a statement stating government's view on the legal position. Both President Kufuor and now President John Dramani Mahama came to a conclusion that historically, governments have intervened to resolve the matter without lasting peace. Again, they indicated that the courts of Ghana had also been invited to resolve the issues implicated in the Boko matter, and the pronouncements have not been respected by other sides if it went against them. As a result, both governments, who now represent the two main political traditions, now take a position that I should define a solution to the Boko situation using mediation, and my recommendations or conclusions shall be enforced by both governments at all times as a traditional solution to the problem. So, it is important to give a brief assessment of the documents submitted by the Nairi and the Bokunaba, as well as oral rendition of their respective cases, as part of efforts to mediate the chieftain's dispute in Boko to ensure lasting peace. That's an examination of the respective cases of the parties relative to the facts, custom, tradition, and the law will be evaluated and or examined. So, the case of the Mampruses is that Mampruku Kingdom started in Pusiga near Boko and founded by Nabewa at a time when there was no ethnic group in the Boko area called Kusasi. After the demise of Nabewa, Na Tosugu became the Nairi and decided to relocate the capital of the Mampruku Kingdom from Pusiga to Gambaga, but he appointed a Tingunaba, a caretaker, to take care of his father's shrine at Pusiga. It was further asserted that in the 17th century, the 10th Nairi, called Na Atabia, decided to secure his territory by establishing garrisons and military posts at key positions that were uninhabited, which led to the establishment of Boko and 5 other towns. The first chief of Boko was one Na Ali Atabia, who was the son of Na Atabia in the year 1721. Furthermore, the Mampruses ruled Boko for over 150 years through 8 successive Mamprusi chiefs before the arrival of the British in the Northern Territories, and specifically Boko in 1907. In 1957, so they claim, the CP the CPP government, through its sympathizers in Boku, elected one Abugrabo Azoka as Bokunaba. And the case of the Kusasis is that they practiced the Tindana system where the eldest male person in the clan becomes the traditional ruler, the leader of the clan, vested with administrative, judicial, and spiritual authority. However, when the British arrived in Boku in 1901, in their bid to advance the indirect rule system, they were not satisfied with the Tindani system, so they decided to adopt qualified Tindanis to become chiefs. And in areas where they could not find qualified Tindanis, they appointed other people as chiefs. The Kusasis further contended that it was around this period that the Mamprusis presented themselves to the British as chiefs of their ethnic community in Boku and got registered accordingly. However, the Tindani position was never abolished as a traditional arrangement. Thus, the chiefs and Tindanis coexisted, but the new Mamprusi rulers became power drunk and started misusing their authority over the Kusasi landowners, hence a decision by the Kusasis to remove the Mamprusi chiefs and replace them with their own. So when the last Mamprusi chief died in 1956, the Kusasis gathered in Boku in 1957 and selected a son of a prominent Tindani in Boku called Abugrabo Azoka I to fill the vacancy as Bokunaba. Following the death of Naba Abugrabo Azoka in 1983, his first son was selected in 1984 to succeed him as the next Bokunaba by name Zugran Asigri Abugrago Azoka II. He has continued in that position till date. But I'll try and let me give you some background of previous governments and judicial efforts to resolve the Boku matter. Boku Affairs, report of the committee appointed by His Excellency the Acting Governor General, Lord Listowel, to inquire into and report his findings on the claim of Abugrago Azoka to have been elected or appointed and installed as chief of the Kusasi area. On the 6th of June 1957, while the then Nairi was going through the various ceremonies in Nalurigu connected with the appointment of a new Bokunaba in the person of Mahama Yeremia, a Mamprusi prince, the Kusasis had gathered in overwhelming numbers in Boku to also elect and install Abugrago Azoka, a Kusasi, as the chief of Boku and the head of the then canton chiefs in the Kusasi area. This followed the death of Na Awuni, who was the Mamprusi chief of Boku and head of the Kusasi area. The enskinment of a Kusasi chief created a situation where there were two rival claimants to the skin of Boku, and all residing in Boku. Several petitions and representations were made to government of the day, which decided to set up a committee to inquire into the rival claims. The committee was made up of lawyer S.D. Opoku Afari as chairman, Nana Yawa Ajimambedu, then Domahine, and Lure Canton III, the then Tumukro, as members. After the deliberations of the committee, they reported to the Governor General, Lord Listowel, then, that Abugrago Azoka has been customarily elected and installed the chief of Kusasi area. Abugrago Azoka thus became the first Kusasi Bokunaba and head of the Kusasi area. The records of the committee reveals that they accepted evidence adduced by him that his father and grandfather owned most of the land that constitutes present-day Boku Township. In the analysis of the committee, the Kusasis were the original inhabitants of the Kusasi area. The Mamprusis had invaded the area and began to install princes from Nalurigu to rule over the Kusasis. They suspected that the arrival of the Europeans might have added the establishment of Mamprugu hegemony in the area. At the time of the work, listed the same names, so restoring the names as it is now again. So Abugrago Azoka becomes Bokunaba again. And Alaji Adam Zambio then is prohibited from becoming, from being Bokunaba. The passage of PND's Law 75 led to bloody clashes between the Mamprusis and the allies and the Kusasis and the allies. Other complementary measures were implemented by the PNDC to restore law and order. They included the Boko Lands Vesting Law, PNDC Law 99, which vested all lands in the Boko district and a PNDC free from all encumbrances, and the passage of the Prohibited Organization Boko District Law 1984, PNDC Law 98, which proscribed tribal organizations in Boko. Abugurago Azoka had died before the passage of PNDC Law 75. The Kuskasis then enskined his son as Asigri Abugurago Azoka as the Bokonaba and the head chief of the Kusasi traditional area. The Constitution of Ghana, 1992, came into force with the Kusasis in place as the rulers of Boko. Asigri Abugurago Azoka was Bokonaba, and by virtue of that, he enskinned all the divisional chiefs in the Kusasi traditional area. Article 270, Clause 1 of the Constitution provides that the institution of chieftaincy, together with its traditional councils as established by customary law and usage, is hereby guaranteed. So the position of Asigri Abugurago Azoka seemed to have been frozen in time by the 1992 Constitution, until one Alhaji Ibrahim Adam Zambio mounted a challenge in the present Supreme Court. This 2003 action instituted by the man proceeded before the Supreme Court, seeking to invoke its original jurisdiction, was discontinued without liberty to reapply under Article 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution and the Chieftaincy Restoration of Status of Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75, which had then been repealed by the Statute Law Revision Act 1996, Act 516 in 1996. On Tuesday, the 29th day of April 2003, the Supreme Court of Ghana provided what legal analysts believe to be finality to the question of the Boko skin. The ruling was very short and yet profound. Report says, the application to discontinue is granted, but without liberty to apply PNDC law, liberty to apply under PNDC Law 75 and Article 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution. Cost of those days, 10 million to the first defendant. Signed, G.K. Akwa, Justice of the Supreme Court, T.K. Aziz, Justice of the Supreme Court, S.A. Brobe, Justice of the Supreme Court, S.G. Beidou, Justice of the Supreme Court, Dr. S. Chum, Justice of the Supreme Court. Apparently, on the morning of the hearing of the matter, the plaintiffs instead sought leave to discontinue the case. The leave was granted, but the court directed that no one should come back to that court again pursuant to Articles 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution, the matter of the restoration of Abugurago Azoka and all other sub-chiefs under PNDC Law 75. Under the 1992 Constitution, the Supreme Court has final authority to make such pronouncements, and only that court can review its decisions under certain circumstances. I've gone to great length to review the history of various legal resolutions of the matter and the involvement of the various military regimes to show that this matter has traveled a long, tortuous legal and political journey. In spite of the efforts of various courts and governments, the Memphis did not give up their claims, and the Kusasis did not relent in their efforts to assert their independence and identity as a self-ruling tribe. The Nairi kept insisting that the Supreme Court has not ruled on the issues implicated in the Bokonskin matter. Asigri Abugurago Azoka insisted that the Supreme Court gave finality.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is very interesting. And I know many of you, when you are listening to Otunfuo present the report, you get irritated. But let's be patient. He did what he thinks is the best and want Ghanaians to applaud him. But I'm speaking on authority that Otunfuo doesn't deserve any applause because he did nothing good regarding the mediation. And as a matter of fact, I'm being honest with Otumfuo, I'm being honest with Asanteman, and I'm being honest with Ghanaians and the President of the Republic of Ghana, including the Kusasis. Otumfuo Osei Tutu II has done a great disservice to himself. He has done a great disservice to Asanteman. He has done a great disservice to the President of the Republic of Ghana, both John Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo. He has done a great disservice to Ghanaians. He has done a great disservice to the people of Boku, and particularly the Kusasis. Why am I saying so? When you listen to Otumfuo carefully, and I'm going to re-echo some of his things and then make my analysis. When you listen to Otumfuo carefully, we must understand that he was talking about chieftaincy dispute between Kusasis and Mamprosis. And the genesis of it, or let me say chieftaincy, is about customary law. And he, Otumfuo, the facts that he was relying on, established that in 1958, when the Opoku Afare Committee concluded that Abugrago Azoka was customarily installed as chief of the Kusasi area. So any serious mediator who is mediating the Boku chieftaincy dispute must anchor the foundation of his mediation on customary law. On customary law. Otumfuo spoke nonsense, or let me put it this way mildly, did injustice to customary law. The second point I need to highlight why I said Otumfuo has done a great disservice to all of us is that he has failed to interrogate the 1958 Opoku Afares Committee report. This is a report that occurred in 1958. Yes, as a mediator, you are gathering facts and evidences. But as I said in my last program, whatever facts that you are gathering as a mediator, you don't need to take those facts as the gospel truth. You need to interrogate them. Whatever the Mamprosi tells you about their case, you need to interrogate to see whether the Mamprosis are lying or not. Whatever the Kusasis are telling you, you need to interrogate that. Whatever information and facts you've gathered from independent sources, you need to go the extra mile to interrogate that, to establish the facts from whatever you have gathered, so that in your report, whatever facts that you are presenting, it cannot be disputed. Otumfuo failed to do that. So he failed to interrogate the 1958 Opoku Afares Committee. However, he seems to have taken whatever captured in that report as the gospel truth. For example, in the committee report, it says that the Kusasis are the original inhabitants of the Boku traditional area. Is that the truth? Is that the fact? If you don't do further interrogation, you will not know that this is a misleading fact, right? Now, the third point, why I said Otumfuo has done a great disservice to all of us, is that in the very report that he chose to rely on, he picked and chose what facts from the report to present to the president and to present to Ghanaians, and want Ghanaians to clap and applaud him for doing a good job. And I'm saying Otumfuo doesn't deserve that. Why? Let me give you one clear example. Just as I told you, you heard Otumfuo saying that the Opoku Faris Committee report established that the Kusasis are the original inhabitants of the Boku traditional area. Granted that that is a fact, even though I'm saying that is not a fact before, because if you interrogate the Kusasis' own historical facts, which I have shown you on this program, written in their book just last year, you will realize that no, what happened in 1958 was a misrepresentation, right? But Otumfuo highlighted that in his mediation report. Otumfuo failed to highlight that it is captured in the same report that the Mampusis ruled Boku 150 years before the arrival of the British. He captured that part as the Mamprusi case. When he was giving the Mamprusis narrative, he captured that this is what the Mamprusis are saying, right? But when he came to the background information that he was given, where he was talking about the 1958 Opoku Faris Committee report, he deliberately failed to tell the president and Ghanaians that in that report, it was established that the Mamprusis ruled Boku for 150 years. Now, this is very significant. And as we continue with this, I continue with my analysis, I'll hammer more on those points. Now, let's go to the report itself. Now, let me quote. Otumfuo started by saying that, like I said, it was not a mediation. It wasn't, like I said, it was a mediation. It wasn't an arbitration. I will present the facts as they are, and it should be binding on all of us. I have explained the circumstances to the Nairi in terms of the decision I took. I have spoken to the Bokunaba about it. So, we have to read what I wrote so that everybody, my brother the Nairi and my son the Bokunaba, will know that that is exactly what I said. So it isn't the president who is doctoring anything. Now, honestly, Otumfuo has done a great disservice to Ghanaians. If you are a Ghanaian and you just listen to Otumfuo say this, you would think he has said something brilliant. You would think he has said something that is ethical and professional about mediation. But it is not. Let me tell you why. The portion that I just read to you, you hear Otumfuo saying that he has explained the circumstances to the Nairi and the Bokunaba, Abugaragu Azoka. For the purposes of this program, let me maintain it that way. And then he said he has explained to them the decision that he took. Now, let's come back and then ask this question. Why didn't Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II explain the circumstances and the decisions that he took to the mediation representative of the Nairi and the mediation representative of Abugaragu Azoka, the Kosasi Bokunaba? Why didn't he do that, but chose to do that, to do the explanation to the Nairi and Abugaragu Azoka, knowing very well that throughout the mediation, the more than 2.5 years of the mediation, Nairi has sent a delegation, his representative, who comes to meet you anytime you want them to discuss about the mediation. Nayiri has given them their authority. Abogrago Azoka has also done that. So as a mediator, if you have met these parties, the representative of the Nayiri and the representative of the Kusasi community chief, and in fact, on the last day you met them, you never told them the circumstances on the last day and the decision that you, the mediator, was about to take. You chose to do that to the Nayiri and the Kusasi community chief. That is unprofessional and that is unethical in mediation. I will explain. If the Asantehene had explained that to the mediation representatives of the Nayiri and the Kusasi community chief, you realize that the Otunfo wouldn't have to explain to the president and to Ghanaians that he wants to read it so that nobody would think that the president has doctored whatever he has presented to them. It seems to be like some self-guiltiness in here. If Otunfo had professionally mediated, as I indicated, the report that he presented to the president and to Ghanaians, he would have been able to get the Nayiri representatives and then the Kusasi community chief representative to sign on that document, to sign to the decision that he took. Again, that wouldn't have solved the problem of anybody doctoring or suspecting that the president or somebody somewhere might have doctored the report. No wonder the respected Martin ABK Hamidu described the mediation as a gargantuan scam. Indeed, the mediation is a scam. So if the parties, if the Nayiri representatives and the Kusasi community chief representative has signed the report that he presented to Ghanaians and want you to applaud him, this is what would have happened. The integrity of the report would be legally protected by the agreement itself as a mediation settlement, even if it were a deadlock. Number two, there would be no ambiguity whether the outcome is binding or not binding, or can be binding or cannot be binding. If Otunfo has done a diligent professional job, he would have gotten his report endorsed by the parties. And the integrity, the integrity of it would have been legally protected. Number three, Asantehene there wouldn't be the need for Asantehene to, as it were, try to publicly defend his own report. There wouldn't also have been the need for the media to put a blackout on the Nayiri and Mamprugu. But you know, when something is not right, that is what happens. The statement I just read to you from Otunfo reveals two things. based on the vacuum that it created. The vacuum it created here is that Otumfuo couldn't get the representative to sign the very report that he is presenting to Ghanaians, and saying that that report should be binding, and saying that it is his decision. Mediation doesn't work that way. So these are the two things that that statement revealed. It reinforces the issue of credibility and also perceived political contamination, my dear brothers and sisters. I must add that the way Otumfuo went by or conducted his traditional mediation, it is unusual in mediation. In all principles of mediation, it is unusual. Number two, misrepresentation of a non-binding outcome as a binding outcome is unethical. Otumfuo mediation has no any legal protection to make it binding because the Nairi representative and then the Kusasi community chief representative have not signed to that document. So that document cannot be binding. However, Otumfuo said it should be binding. That is misrepresentation of a non-binding outcome as a binding outcome. And I'm saying that that is unethical. Number three, the mediation process lacked written terms, record authentication, and authorized signatures. The mediation lacked written terms. Asante never spelled it out clearly from the beginning to the Nairi and to the Kusasi community chief that these are the terms of mediation that I'm going to engage you with. He didn't do that. So it lacks written terms. Also, the record, whatever he is presenting as his report, has not been authenticated by the Nairi representatives and the Kusasi community chief representatives. In other words, there is no signatures to it. And that is also unprofessional mediation on the part of Otumfuo. Now, guess what? You and I know that audios have come out from the Kusasis themselves alleging possible bribery made by their leaders. And Voice of Mamprugu has shared one of those audios. The Pusuga chief, who is highly regarded among the Kusasis as the second in command to Abugrago Azoka, also came out to tell us that Mahama Ayarga went and saw some three prominent chiefs and pleaded on to them to talk to Otumfuo to make his report favor the Kusasis. And indeed, the report favored the Kusasis. These are established facts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, lessons that future mediators, and in fact, Otumfuo himself, need to pick from this. This is my suggestion. Lessons that need to be picked from this. One, in future, Asante, if mediating in any chieftaincy dispute or any chief who is engaged mediating any chieftaincy dispute should first of all try to get the consent of the parties involved. The mediator should also make sure that there is accuracy in his facts and records. Number 3, the mediator should ensure that the outcome of his mediation is binding with legal protection based on signatures from the parties and not based on his sole decision and whims and caprices that it should be binding. It is unlawful, unethical, and unprofessional on the part of Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II to want to impose his decision and recommendation on the Mamprosis and the Kusasis and Ghanaians and to make it binding. Let me repeat, it is unethical, unprofessional, and illegal. Last but not the least, any future mediator should also ensure that there is immunity from political speculation of his work, his or her work. There is immunity from political speculation. And that immunity can only occur when there is transparency. And in Otumfuo's mediation, I can say that there is no 100% transparency. Let me give one clear example. Otumfuo decided to take a decision as a mediator. He failed to explain the circumstances surrounding the decision that he took to the representatives of the parties that he has been meeting. He chose not to tell them, and that is lack of transparency. But rather take a phone to call the Nairi and say, oh, this, and call Boku Naba to say this. It is unethical, unprofessional, and should not be encouraged. Ladies and gentlemen. Now, let me also highlight one or two things. Otumfuo went on to say that, and I quote him, at the commencement of the hostilities, the government of President Akufo-Addo had issued a statement stating government view on the legal position. Both President Akufo-Addo and now President John Dramani Mahama came to a conclusion that historically, governments have intervened to resolve the matter without lasting peace. And that is the most important thing, lasting peace. So it means that Otumfuo, acknowledging this, should know that his mediation, why President Akufo-Addo asked him to mediate, and why President John Dramani Mahama also said he should continue with the mediation, is that they were looking for lasting peace and not self-imposition of decision and recommendation that may not bring lasting peace. So you see the disservice Otumfuo has done to the Kusasis themselves. What is the point having chieftaincy when you don't have peace? What is the point? What is the point claiming that government has resolved the chieftaincy dispute in Boku when government cannot guarantee peace? What is the point? What is the point a mediator saying that his report should be binding when that report or when that binding outcome cannot lead to peace? What is the point? It's a waste of time and resources. So he went on to say that again, they indicated that the court of Ghana had also been invited to resolve the issues, and the pronouncement have not been respected by either side if it went against him. And in fact, this is an insult on Ghanaians. It is an insult on the two presidents who told Otumfuo this. It's also an insult and an indictment on the judiciary or the courts of Ghana, for that matter, the judiciary. Let me explain. Now, Otumfuo and the NPP government, it started with the NPP government, told us that the Supreme Court has settled the Boko chieftaincy dispute in favor of the Kusasi. That's what the NPP government told us. The Supreme Court. The same NPP government, according to Otumfuo, told him that courts have made pronouncement on the issue, and when the Mamprosis and Kusasis refuse to abide by the pronouncements of the court. It means that logically, going by the NPP government position, it means that the Mamprosis have refused to abide by the Supreme Court verdict, right? Now, if you don't go deep, you will not see the insult that I'm talking about. You ask yourself, between Otumfuo and then the Supreme Court, who has legal authority over the other? Who has legal authority over the Boko chieftaincy dispute? Who has legal authority in Ghana between the Supreme Court and Otumfuo Osei Tutu? Is Otumfuo Osei Tutu pronouncement superior to the Supreme Court ruling, or it is the Supreme Court ruling that is superior to Otumfuo's pronouncement? Now, this is the point. I've given you the background. So they asked Otumfuo to mediate. And when Otumfuo mediated, he himself concluded that the Supreme Court has settled the matter in favor of Aburagwa Zoka Aninchema. And so it should be binding. You see, if Otumfuo were smart and intelligent, he would have avoided that. Because Otumfuo doesn't need to tell the President of the Republic of Ghana that the Supreme Court ruling is binding and should be binding. All Otumfuo needed to do when Nana Akufo-Addo brought the matter to him to say that this is the legal position of the government, that the Supreme Court has ruled on the matter. However, the Mamprosis have refused to abide by the Supreme Court ruling. I want you to mediate on this. If Otumfuo was the King Solomon that people want us to believe, in other words, if he was using wisdom, if Otumfuo was very smart, he should have told the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, that, listen, Mr. President, you yourselves agree that, or the position of your government is that the Supreme Court has settled the matter. So there is no need to mediate on it. Just go and enforce the law, just as the Kusasis have been telling you. But he himself accepted to mediate. And you, Asante Hini, you knew very well and you believed that this was what the government told you. So what were you going to mediate upon? To take 2.5 years to come out to say that yes, indeed, the Supreme Court has settled the matter. Does that make sense? And now you can understand why respected personalities like Kwesi Pratt questioned why Ghanaians should take Otumfuo serious based on his mediation report. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Otumfuo went on to say, as a result, both governments who now represent the two main political traditions, that is the NPP and the NDC, now take a position that I should define solution. I should define solution to the Boko situation using mediation and my recommendations or conclusions shall be enforced by both governments at all times as a traditional solution to the problem. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I cannot emphasize much to say that Otumfuo mediation, the 2.5 years of Otumfuo's mediation and the report, the outcome of his report is indeed an insult on the nation Ghana. It's an insult on the MPP government, an insult on the NDC government, and a disservice to all of us. And in fact, the Kusasis should not be jubilating. They should not be jubilating. As I explained already, a Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, you believe that took a decision that has settled the matter. The former president and the current president told you that you should go into the matter and then define a solution. Perhaps what they were telling you, Asante Hini, is that define a solution that is not traditional of the court system. In other words, that is something different from court decision. When you are able to do that, your recommendation will be binding. And they were doing that knowing very well that as a mediator, you need to get the Mampusis and the Kusasis agree to your solutions and sign on it. And that one will be binding. And that is the non-traditional judicial process of resolving the chieftaincy dispute. Is that what Otumfuo report presented to us before God and man? In any case, what did Otumfuo define as his solution to the problem of the dispute? Otumfuo has practically not defined any solution at all. The report speaks to that because the outcome of the report relied on the Supreme Court ruling. And my previous program, I already did justice to that. And in fact, Martin Kebu, the lawyer of Nashirga, also told us that the Supreme Court ruling did not settle the chieftaincy dispute because it did not talk to the matter itself. In 2003, the Mampusi lawyers then, Nana Akufo-Addo's law chambers, also wrote a letter stating the same thing, right? So what at all did Otumfuo do differently from what had occurred from 1957 to 2003? That the former president and the current president is like, we want to resolve this matter permanently, but we haven't been able to resolve it by the court processes and all that. So Otumfuo, you are believed to be King Solomon. Give us your King Solomon wisdom. Use your King Solomon wisdom to come out to define a solution and solve this matter for us. And what did King Solomon do? Santiban, what did King Solomon do? Anyway, so let's continue, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, the question we need to be asking is, Otumfuo told us that the former president and the current president told him to define a solution and his recommendations will be binding. Now we should be asking ourselves, professionally in mediation, should the mediator disclose his solution and recommendations to the parties involved? Obviously, yes, because of transparency. And also because you are mediating, because you need to get both parties to move away from their entrenched positions to come to a middle ground where party A will make compromises, party B will make compromises, and then sign a document, and that will seal a deal. That will be what will bring lasting peace. Did Otunfo disclose his solutions and recommendations to the mediation parties? No. Why? Because there wasn't transparency in the mediation process. There wasn't absolute transparency, let me put it that way. And that is questionable. Now, the key principle, why it is questionable, is that the key principle in mediation is that a mediator, of course, yes, you can define solution and make recommendations. However, you cannot keep your solutions and recommendation as secret from as a secret thing from the parties. It is against the key principles of mediation. My dear brothers and sisters, I've already dealt with the the binding and enforcement aspect of it. Now let's go to where the Otunfo presented the cases of the Mamprosis and the Kusasis. Now the essence of this program is to highlight some of the facts, relevant facts, that Otunfo deliberately chose to hide from Ghanaians in his report, to hide from the president in his report. Now, in presenting the Mamprosis case, Otunfo highlighted the foundational history of the Mamprosis and how the Boku chieftaincy was established according to the Mamprosis in 1721. He highlighted that the Mamprosis gave their history from Nagbewa, right, all the way, from Pusga, how Nagbewa settled in Pusga, and after his death, his son became the Nayiri, and later on settled in Pusga briefly, and later on moved to Nalirgu, and then centuries later, the 10th Nayiri established 5 communities: Boku, Binturi, Wirkambo, Teshi. I can't remember the last one, right? That is the history of the Mamprosis. Then Otunfo also highlighted that according to the Mamprosis, he said, so they claim. Interestingly, he used that word, that the Mamprosis, so they claim, said they ruled Boku for 150 years before the arrival of the British. Now, mathematically, when you take 150 years out, the context here is that Otunfo, before we go to the Otunfo, the Mamprosis stated this, according to Otunfo, as their fact, right? So when you do the mathematics, 1957, when the chieftaincy dispute started. So when you do your mathematics from 1957, right, 150 years before 1957 would be 1807. 1807. So then the Mamprasi said they ruled Boko for 150 years with 8 chiefs before the arrival of the British. And when you go into the history of the Mamprasis, by 1807, Boko had 8 Mamprasi chiefs skinned by the Nayiri. Now, Otunfo also said that according to the Mamprasis, in 1957, the CPP government, through its sympathizers, elected Abugrago Azwaka as the Bokunaba. So these are the 3 highlights he gave on the Mamprasi case. Then when he went to the Kusasis, you take note of the 150 years. It's a very key element in this, to let you see the contradictions, right, in Otufo's facts that he used to arrive at the conclusion. When he came to the Kusasis, he said that the Kusasis claim they practice the Tindana system, where the elders, let me quote, the Kusasis practice the Tindana system, where the elder male person in the clan becomes the traditional ruler or leader of the clan. And according to the Kusasis, when the British arrived in Boko in 1901, according to the Kusasis, to advance the indirect rule system, right? Or let me be fair, when they arrived in the northern territories, right? But of course, according to Otumbo, they said when they arrived in Boko in 1901, to advance their indirect rule system, the British were not satisfied with the Tindana system. So they decided to adopt qualified Tindanas to become chiefs, according to the Kusasis. So what this means is that by the custom, tradition, and practice of the Kusasi people, they do not practice chieftaincy. They practice Tindana system. And with the Tindana system, they have client heads and client or rulers. So this particular clan has its ruler or a leader. It is not chieftaincy system. So the Kusasi system and the Mamprasi system are 2 distinct, right? However, according to the Kusasis, when the British came and they wanted to do their indirect rule to use chiefs, they realized that they were not satisfied with the Kusasi Tindana system. So they converted some of the Tindanas to become chiefs in communities, Kusasi communities, where there were no chiefs. All right, so you see, fundamentally, Otufo should have highlighted this and then use that one to go back to what happened in 1957, the customary issue, right? To then come to conclusion and not rely on Supreme Court ruling that has not settled the matter. It is a scam. Now let's continue. Otunfo went on to say that according to the Kusasis, in areas where they could not find qualified Tindanas, they appointed other people as chiefs. Now listen to this very careful. It was, according to the Kusasis, it was around this period, that is in 1901, that the Mamprasis presented themselves to the British as chiefs of their ethnic community in Boko and got registered accordingly. Now, this is very important. You see, that's why I'm saying that Otunfo himself, I don't know what I just don't know what he did. Now, let's take note of this. As I told you, it is established in 1958 by the Opoku Afaris Committee that the Mamprosis ruled Boku as chiefs for 150 years before the arrival of the British. And I'm saying that in 1957, 150 years before 1957 would take you to 1807. So you even put aside the 1721, and let's even start the conversation from 1807. So it means that even if you wanted to interrogate the Mamprosis facts, you can interrogate to say that based on that, it means that possibly the Mamprosi chief or chieftaincy started in 1807 and not 1721. You can establish that fact, and then you will not have problem with anybody, because you can say that based on the 1958 committee report, that is what you can rely on. Just as you are relying on that report which said that the Kusasis are the original occupant, right? So let's take note of that. Then you then come to the situation where the Kusasis said that areas where the British couldn't find qualified Tindanes to make them chiefs, let me say, areas where they could not find qualified Tundanes, they appointed other people to make them chiefs, right? Now this is this is an interesting thing that I need to take my time to point out the contradiction and why Otumfuo should not feel proud about his own report. The Kusasis told us that when the British came to use their indirect rule through chiefs, they realized that the Kusasis were practicing the Tindanaship system. The British were not satisfied with that system. So they appointed qualified Tindanes and made them chiefs. Areas where the British could not find qualified Tindanes, they appointed other people as chiefs. And according to the Kusasis, it was around that time that the Mamprosis presented themselves as chiefs of the Mamprosi community in Boku, and the British registered them as such. Let me laugh and then break it down into pieces for you to understand. What I'm going to reveal to you will let you understand that the 1958 Opoku Afaris Committee, as we said, was politically motivated, just as the 2025 mediation. Now, if you've never understood it, this is where you get it right. Let me take my time again and give you the background, because this is very important. This is a defining moment. According to Otumfuo, the Kusasis in their narrative told him that when the British came to Boku to rule through the indirect rule in 1901, the British realized that in the Boku traditional area, the Kusasis were practicing the Tindana system. The British were not satisfied by that system because the British believed that, or thought that, their indirect rule worked perfectly with chiefs and not Tindanes. So what did the British do? They made an adjustment. They then converted the Tindanes, or appointed qualified Tindanes. Underline the word qualified Tindanes and appointed them as chiefs. The Kosasis went on and told Asantehene, which Asantehene told us, that where the British couldn't find qualified Tindanes, they appointed other people. And according to the Kosasis, as told us by Otumfuo, it was around that time that the Mamprusis presented themselves as chiefs of the Mamprusi community in Boko. Let's not even argue that they presented themselves as chief of Boko. Let's agree that they presented themselves as Mamprusi community in Boko. And then the British accepted them and then registered them. And now this is it. Let's look at the logic and expose the Kosasis, expose Asantehene, and expose the Opoku Afaris Committee report. The Opoku Afaris Committee report in 1958 told us that, according to Otumfuo, and in fact, I have read the report, that the Kosasis are the original inhabitants of Boko. So let's take that as a fact. Let's take that as a fact. The committee also told us that Abogrago Azoka is a descendant of Tindanes of Boko, and he was customarily installed as chief of the Kosasi area. Point number one, the Kosasis are the original inhabitants of the area. Point number two, Abogrago Azoka is a descendant of a Tindana who was installed customarily as chief of Boko and the Kosasi area. So this is the question we need to be asking ourselves. When the Kosasis said that areas where the British couldn't find qualified Tindanes to appoint them as chiefs, they appointed other people. In 1901, where was Abogrago Azoka forefathers? Because we are told that Abogrago Azoka is a qualified Tindana. That is why he was installed as chief of Boko. And if he is a qualified Tindana, it means that his father was a Tindana, his grandfather was a qualified Tindana, his forefathers were qualified Tindanes. So the question is, in 1901, when the British were appointing qualified Tindanes as chiefs in areas where there were no chiefs so that they could do their indirect rule, didn't the British find a qualified Tindana from the Kosasi community in Boko? If yes, where was Abogrago Azoka descendants, the qualified Tindanes? If it is that Abogrago Azoka forefathers were in Boko in 1901, the question still remains, why didn't the British appoint the qualified Kosasi Tindana from Boko as the chief of Boko, but rather accepted the Mamprusis and registered them as chiefs of Boko? I will leave this question to Asantehene to sincerely and honestly look for the answer. I will leave this question to the Kosasis to honestly and sincerely, before God and man, look for the answer of this question. We have told Ghanaians that we know the history of the Azokas very well. The current Kusasi chief, his father Abugrago and grandfather Azoka, came to the Boku area in the 1930s. They came to Pusga, settled in Pusga for a while. Then there was a misconduct that made them to move to Boku on the permission of the Boku Naba at the time, the grandfather of Nashiriga, who accepted them and then handed them over to one of his brothers, who became the Boku Naba in 1957, Na Yirmiya Salma, and accepted them. We know the Azoka family very well. We know the Azoka family very well. And those of you who have been wondering why the Kusasis have taken Philip as the second in command, there's a history to it. And I just gave you a gist of that history. So, we, the Mamprosis, knowing very well that the Abugrago Azokas came to Boku in the 1930s, we are not surprised that in 1901, when the British were looking for qualified Tindanes among Kusasis to appoint as chief, they couldn't find none in Boku. Kusasis, how can you be proud of yourself that Boku is your land and that you knew very well that the British came to Boku in 1901 and were appointing qualified Tindanes as chief, but there wasn't any qualified Tindana from Boku as a Kusasi who could have been appointed as a chief? This is a big question, Kusasis. This is a big question, Asantehene. This is a big question, John Dramani Mahama. We leave all of you to the gods of Mamprugu. We leave all of you to the Almighty Allah. He will take care of the situation for us, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, let's go to the last part of, you know what, I think I wanted to, all right, let me do another 30 minutes. So we're going to have a 2 hours program. So I'm going to take a break by playing to you the video of the Kusasi second in command. Then later on, we'll come to what happened in 1983, 84, 85 on this issue, where we'll then make the comparison. We've discussed the facts that Otunfo gave us. And of course, one of his recommendations based on his facts and decision is that the Nayiri should withdraw Nashiriga and bring him back to Nailerigu, or Nashiriga should remain in Boku as a common person. And this is an insult on Mamprugu and an insult on the Nayiri, because Otunfo is basically saying that I, Otunfo, I am diskinning the chief, you Nayiri in skin. I mean, what an impudence. What an impudence. Asanteman, how could this happen? Can Nayiri diskin a chief in skin by Otunfo? It's a shame. But anyway, let me play, let's go to Philip, and then from there we'll come back to 1984. I'll give you the facts and then we'll continue. So let's listen to this. Don't worry, the audio will come. This aspect, this part of the video, there's no audio. But I want you to take note of the guy holding a gun This was the Saman Pit Day, the Kusasi Festival Day. The guy was holding a gun right behind the Puziga chief. So this is the Puziga chief to your right. You see another guy also holding a gun. So there were two people on that day holding guns, walking behind the Puziga chief, the second in command in the Kusasi tradition.
Bok listen umi shi musa mano annam umi din ka bayati ba ma to kun na fa ayar ga ba shi bila wa bara kun ko tawla ba ba kun yana do fungo ni bambo shi ba ma Allah akbar ya fi bara kun ye bara kun ba nyu ka amni ba no shi ne ba kun bima ba kun fungo mu bambo shi banan munan sos juna ka ba ko test kin to ati santana ba na beda banan ji Antoine ayarga do na fa hotel yendu na gwanwura bo ayarga an kan dollars na mo so da tin bi tesla lakin anomiya yara yelwa ka boko tinji usa mu ya litinam yo o ya puma yele nai ya no yira ka ba nyu doka ya an arda kan musa ka ba nan nyu ka ba kela dege ibo nyu Allah on ko ya no ro ba nyu musa wona da sun ka ba kuma ba na ban ono tira mazira to fuku ya no pia kana nti so ka mo ya ga inwa ya ga malo ya ga inwa wallahi ya ga mon punye nin kan nyang na ma to sila na ode na ma kele abba no pelatina pena apuna mano bo se gene ka fa gene ona na du abu ya ka antu aka bona kina ko kina ji ko ko ya du an ka du ki o kina ya tanta kanon pas ama ayar ga ono ko ono dot apa na present san ono ki present ke ka present bang din bokk ya de ki ono ya ngato asa bo ka mo yelo malu su yelo yuga ka yelo da amiye du yugo bala bani yele bakurun dia kaya na pi atese na le na baya to shaka kina yele unfulu mun no babo ko ya shaka la ka ba last nan ko sa no pulu ka temba party ndo ta ba kula ka yel ku ala ka bara man bon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, basically this is that was the most important chief in the Kusasi community after the Bukunaba. He is the one they regard as the second in command. He is called Philip. And he was in his room, or let me say in his residence, speaking to those before him. He was basically telling them how Mahama Ayaraga, the MP for Buku Central, went and met three prominent chiefs, the Yana, the Yabangura, and then the Nanumna, and pleaded with them to use their influence to get Otunfo Osei-Tutu II, the mediator, the sole mediator, to get his decision in favor of the Kusasis, and that Ayarga has done a lot, and he is the only person among the Kusasis who could run up and down. He spoke to the president, he did that, he did it, and he was telling them the effort Ayarga put in for the Kusasis to get whatever reward they got from Otunfo Osei-Tutu II. Again, that is evidence. That is evidence, my dear brothers and sisters. There's another part of the video that I want to play, and that has to do with Mahama Ayarga. Now, let's listen to what Mahama Ayarga say. And it's also, it has relevance to the Otumfuo mediation report and recommendation. Now, let's listen to Mahama Ayarga. But before we listen to Mahama Ayarga, let me show you the photo of this guy. So this is a guy holding a gun in Pusga, right behind the Pusga chief. There was also another guy in the video that I played to you. Now the question is, what is national security doing about this? What is the interior minister doing about this? This particular guy and the other person that we saw in the video, the easiest way you can get them is for national security to pick the Pusga chief. If they pick him and interrogate him, he will produce this guy behind him, guiding him with a gun. And we all know that in the Boko traditional area, the government has made it clear that it is illegal. It is illegal for anyone to possess a gun or even let alone displaying it, right? And look at what happened, my dear brothers and sisters. So this is very important. Now let's listen to Mahama Ayarga.
Te sing mvontela ma puala na mfuba sosa. Diliga kami puala po ba sosa labo. Data kinaka da sango sa normal fo. Bekala kala asmal kuga. Una mi amaru na de kuyuga zabana nai. Taleka tadalawum maliku kuma jisha te lambel miane e manum suru ka yok shuela ka on board garo so kena gad se te ma suru do mon wonne gana usa so fa no bo metes kusas bekala so far no bo mutas kusas na the border te jijia kamo ye ono bo mutas te ka telenza setin la kodegen balam so te bel miela so far no ko mal fokin suwa ka tin la degen balam ka shuela yok.
My dear brothers and sisters, Asantiman, basically this is what Mahama Ayarga said that I want you to relay it to Asante Hene, the respected Asante Hene. When I listened to Asante Hene's full mediation report, the moment he had finished reading the report, he quickly added and told the president that there's still more work to do. He's looking forward to working with the Peace Council and other bodies to engage further with the Mampusis and the Kusasis regarding reconciliation and all that. But this is the most important thing that he said that has direct relation to what Mama Ayarga said, which I want us to take very seriously and start questioning those of you who believed in Mahama Ayarga, who think he is the best that you could ever have. in Ghana or even in Boku, well, you don't know him better than some of us. Then, while Otumfuo, I did hear Otumfuo say that the issue of guns in the hands of civilians will also have to be looked at, and that he was even going to provide finance, of course, together with other stakeholders, so that anybody who brings his gun voluntarily will be given, I think it's 500 Ghana cedis or something like that. I can't remember the exact amount. But that was the idea, which is very laudable. Now, having this background information, what did Mahama Yaraga say to his people when he went to Garu? He was telling them that they have gotten what they want, basically saying that the report is in their favor. And so now there's the need for everybody to be peaceful, that everybody should stop the armed conflict and all that, which is also very laudable. However, this is where you need to take note. Mahama Yaraga told them that he knew that many of the youth bought arms and ammunitions and use that in the fighting and all that. Now that they have gotten what they want, the report in their favor, he was pleading with them to stop attacking people on the roads. They should allow anybody from anywhere who wants to apply the rules to do that without any intimidation or attack. He went on to tell them that everybody should hide his gun. You see, you would have thought that a responsible Ghanaian, a responsible national leader, a member of parliament for decades, a leader of government business, that is majority leader of the Republic of Ghana, highly educated, who has been telling people that his mother is a Mamprusi, his father is a Kusasi, he doesn't take side, he wants peace, and he has suffered a lot. You would have thought that such a person would have shown utmost responsibility, wisdom, by advising the youth that Otumfuo said, surrender your guns, there will be financial reward for it. So I'm appealing to you to hand over your guns to the police, or I will make arrangement with you. If you fear to go to the police, I will make arrangement with the government and Otumfuo so that they will fashion a way that you can surrender your guns without disclosing your identity and still get your money. One would have thought that that is what a responsible leader of Ghana would have done. But what did he say? He rather he advised the youth to hide their guns. So if the youth hide their guns today, what are you indirectly telling them tomorrow? They should hide it today and then use it to fight tomorrow. So Your Majesty Otumfuo said to do, the second you realize that your report, the outcome of your report, and which favors the Kusasi, you were doing so with the hope that it will bring about permanent peace. Now, how can there be permanent peace when national leaders, especially Kusasis, who are encouraging the youth to rather hide their guns and ammunitions? All right, ladies and gentlemen, now let's go straight to what happened in 1984, 83, and 85. During the time of Osei Otumfuo Opoku-Ware the second. In fact, Otumfuo Opoku-Ware is the immediate. Otumfuo Opoku-Ware the second is the immediate predecessor of Otumfuo Osei Tutu the second. He was the president of the National House of Chiefs in the 1980s. He saw the birth of the Boku chieftaincy dispute, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, I'm going to show you something that happened in 1983. 1983. I'm going to give you an evidence of something that happened in 1983. Good. So in 1983, March 1983, this, when you look at the address, you see PNDC, the Castle, Osu, and the title is The Report of the Subcommittee of the PNDC Ad Hoc Committee on Boku Chieftaincy Dispute. And what did it say? It says, at the meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee of the National House of Chiefs on the settlement of chieftaincy disputes held at the State House, Accra, on the 3rd of March 1983, under the chairmanship of Otumfuo Opoku-Ware II, Asantehene, and president of the National House of Chiefs, a subcommittee of 3 members was mandated to proceed to Boku on a fact-finding mission with the view of diffusing the high tension prevalent in Boku district as a result of the dispute over enskinment of the Boku Naba, which dispute was climaxed by the ransacking of the Boku Traditional Council. And of course, you have names of the members. The committee was chaired by Nana Kwama Boateng II. My dear brothers and sisters, I'm going to show you another continuation of that so that we'll put this discussion into proper perspective as usual. Now, this is also another relevant portion of the committee. So we've established that the National House of Chiefs on March 1983 met at Castle Osu with Chairman Rollins, the head of state at that time. And it was in regards to the Boku chieftaincy dispute. And a ad hoc committee, the ad hoc committee had also agreed that they were to proceed to Boku on a fact-finding mission. Now, let me read this part that I showed you on screen. It says, in the process, the committee scored tremendous success in bringing the 2 factions together to a common forum in Boku, town, something which was virtually impracticable prior to the committee's visit. The committee conveyed to the traditional authorities that the Boku chieftaincy dispute was pending before the Judicial Committee of the National House of Chiefs, and that the case had been adjourned to 19th April 1983 for definite hearing. Nananom informed them further that the case could be heard continuously from 19th April until it was disposed of. Nananum also added that the adjournment was not a calculated attempt to delay unduly the hearing of the case. And while the case was pending, they should be law-abiding and exercise restraint, and that all sides to the dispute should be prepared to accept the verdict of the judicial committee. All right, my dear brothers and sisters, let's continue with the evidence that I want to show you so that we can all make our analysis between what Otunfo Setutu told us in his mediation report and the real facts that he refused to share with us. All right, so this document that you can see is a recommendation. No, it's a fact, one of the fact finding, the facts that the committee established. Now, I'm just going to read a couple of them to you. For example, B, it says that the Upper East, no, sorry, it says that the Upper East and Northern regions were once one region, and the entire Boku and Farfara traditional area, now in the Upper East region, were under the traditional suzerainty of the Nayiri, the paramount chief of Mamprusi. So this was a fact established by the National House of Chiefs Committee in 1983. Then D, it says that the creation of the upper region did not abrogate the traditional relationship that existed between the Nayiri and the chiefs and people in the Boku district, as well as the chiefs of the Farfara traditional area. E, that by this time honored and hallowed custom, the Nayiri of Mamprugu enskined the Boku Naba as a divisional chief and many other subdivisional chiefs in the Boku district. F, that though the main cause of the dispute is preferably to the issue of who should enskin the Boku Naba, there is the undercurrent of ethnic prejudice. G, that the Kusasis are of the view that the enskinment of Kusasi chief in the Boku traditional area by the Nayiri of Mamprusi is an affront to them and also tantamount to black colonialism in an independent country like Ghana. H, that the people of Mamprusi origin and other ethnic groups in Boku town, such as Moshis, Bimobes, etc., on the other hand, hold the view that chieftaincy has its core in custom and tradition, that every skin has its lineage, and that any attempt to change these custom and tradition will create an undesirable precedent that will not only be catastrophic to the institution of chieftaincy, but also spell its doom and create interminable chaos. I, that the agitation against the enskinment of chiefs in the Boku district by the Nayiri of Mamprusi is spearheaded by the Kusasi youth and elite. Let me go to the next. Let me show you the next evidence of the facts that Otunfo Setutu decided to hide from you. All right, so this is a continuation. Then when you come to N, it says that unless a workable solution to remedy tribal and ethnic sentiment is found, peace will elude people of Boku district for a long time to come. Now, it then went on to give recommendations. And let me highlight two of the recommendations. It says, one, that the resolution of the dispute should be left to take the normal judicial course. C, that the government should enforce the decision of the judicial tribunal. And we all know that the judicial tribunal, as indicated in the report, was still hearing the case at the National House of Chiefs. And finally, the report came. And then when the report came, the decision of the National House of Chiefs was that Abogrago Azoka, the father of the current Kusasi community chief, was a commoner who was not fit to hold himself as Bokunaba. Now you realize that Asantehene Otumfuo Tutu II did not include this in his report. The question is why? Why? All right, let's continue to 1984. So what happened in 1984 with regards to the National House of Chiefs? Let's continue with the presentation of facts. Now, in 1984, precisely 22nd September 1984, this is minutes of the Standing Committee of the National House of Chiefs held in the conference hall, right? Now, Otumfuo Opoku-Ware II, Asantehene, he was the chairman. And of course, as I indicated earlier, he was the president of the National House of Chiefs at that time. All right, so let's continue. Now, what happened during the meeting? What happened? Let me share with you some interesting information. Now, this was what happened. You realize that this is about Boku chieftaincy issues. So this was what the committee, the National House of Chiefs committee said. It said one of the thorniest chieftaincy problem admittably confronting the government, that is the PNDC government, Nana said, was that of the Boku chieftaincy dispute, contrary to its own avowed declaration to steer clearly of chieftaincy matters, that is referring to the PNDC government. It was regretful that the government has fueled the flames of the misunderstanding by passing a law destooling the current chiefs in the area who were enskined by the Nayiri of Mampusi and replacing them by others, most of whom were dead long ago. Nana described this situation as unfortunate and said that, aware of the error it had committed by yielding to Kusasi domination of the Boku area, resulting in widespread destruction of life and property on both sides, the government has set up a high-powered committee to evolve ways and means of fostering peace and togetherness among the Kusasis and the Mampusis. It went on to say that fruitful results will soon emerge. my dear brothers and sisters. Now let's continue. I have a couple more facts to share with you. Basically, facts that were denied or refused to be shown to the government. I think I already shared this. So let me see what is it that I haven't shared with you. We are getting okay, so let me share with you, what is it? All right, ladies and gentlemen. So those are informations of facts, established facts from the National House of Chiefs, which Otumfuo Osei Tutu II failed to let them reflect or to capture in his report to the president and Ghanaians. And then the question still remains, why? Now, I want to share with you another document from the Navropio in 1985. That is also very telling. So let me show you that, and then we'll bring tonight's program to an end. All right, so this was what happened in 1985. In 1985, I think that there are two more other documents that I need to show to you before this. So let me show those documents first, because I like to do everything in logical and chronological presentation. Okay, so no, this is not what I want to show you. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute to get my information. All right. Yes, so in 1985, the National House of Chiefs met, and it was on the issue of processing of the current Kusasi Community Chief application to be drafted into the membership. You know, the way they do their kululu, right? So they did something wrong, and this was what the National House of Chiefs said. Let me read. Said, Nana Odro Numapau II, in his capacity as the acting chairman of the research committee, informed Nana Num about the decision of the research committee to refuse to process the CD form from Boku traditional area. Giving reasons for this decision, Nana pointed out that it was the intention of the research committee to keep clear of the chieftaincy squabbles in Boku by adopting proper procedure. Proper procedure. I can't emphasize much on this. Proper procedure. Right? Then it went on to say that in that regard, it was decided to return the CD form to be channeled through the regional House of Chiefs, duly approved by the CD form, duly approved, and CD form signed by the regional register to accompany the CD form B. Now, basically, let me give a better information. So when the current Kusasi chief was declared as chief of Boku, they needed to go through the process to get him admitted into the National House of Chiefs. And guess what? Instead of passing it through the regional House of Chiefs, they flew all over, right? They just went straight to the National House of Chiefs and said that, okay, we now have Boku Naba, so we want you to accept him as a member of the National House of Chiefs. And the National House of Chiefs said, listen, we don't do things like that here. We don't do things the Kusasi way. We do it Nananom way, the National House of Chiefs way. So we are not accepting this. Go back and do the right thing, right? And then they went back. And I can tell you on authority, I have every single document about the registration, the requirement, what they need. And then I can tell you on authority that up to date, back to 1984, the Kusasis have not met that requirement. Dr. Issa has written to the National House of Chiefs requesting for those documents. The National House of Chiefs have replied to us that they don't have all the documents. In other words, procedurally, there is an issue there, right? So when people keep on saying the Boku chieftaincy matter, what and whatever, listen. There's a lot that we need to deal with. We need to take our time. And then I know some of you are wondering, but why are we not going to court? Why? Listen, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot decide for the lawyers, right? But this is what I can say. In 2003, this was what the lawyers, Akufo-Addo, Prempeh, and Co. wrote to Justice Bukare, my grandfather, Mamprusi. This was what they said in their letter. I said, the way forward now is to treat the issue as, that was after the Supreme Court ruling, right? So they wrote to the Mamprusis, now giving the Mamprusis what the Supreme Court ruling meant and what could be done next. And I quote, said, the way forward now is to treat the issue as pure chieftaincy matter to be determined in the chieftaincy tribunal. In view of experience in the Supreme Court, we urge caution and patience so that we do not stumble twice in our legitimate quest to straight the wrong. You understand? So I will use this as an excuse for our lawyers. They are still doing their background work. They are doing so. Let's be patient. Let's support them. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me show you my last document from Navropio. And then okay, this is it. So in one of the National House of Chiefs meeting, the Navropio said something that is very, very significant. That is Dr. Ada. So this was what Dr. Ada said in one of the meetings. He said, describing give me a minute. Let me just make sure that I get everything right. Yeah, so describing the Boku chieftaincy, this and then the action of the government. So this was what Dr. Ada said. And he said the government he said, okay, let me take the quote from here. He said, he reminded members of I'm trying to, the screen is all right, good. So now I can see I've enlarged the seat. Okay, he reminded members by said that, okay, let me take the quote here. The chairman of the PNDC, Flight Lieutenant Rollins against Nananom. Okay, no, this is it. He said, I'm just trying to get every word. He said, describing the behavior of the government as preposterous. He reminded members of the innuendos cast by the chairman of the PNDC, Flight Lieutenant Rawlins, against Nananom some years ago when he met the chiefs at the Gonja barracks, when he queried powerful Nananom, where were you when the country was being mismanaged? Right? It continues. He argued that it would be better for Nananom to point out to the government its faults with regards to the policies on certain chieftaincy issues rather than fold up. In that case, he said posterity will judge Nananom as having played their part during those critical periods, and no innuendos will be cast on Nananom in the future. Wow. He continues, making particular reference to the Boku area. The Navrupio stated that although a new Boku Naba was said to have been installed, he wondered who his kingmakers were, since the installment was not officiated by the Najiri, who has over the years been the sole kingmaker to the Boku scheme. According to him, this procedure could be seen as an innovation in chieftaincy, which was very dangerous because chieftaincy was it's a chieftaincy act is based on established custom. Chieftaincy has it based on established custom. So the question is, the mediation of Otumfuo Pokuwari, Otumfuo Soitutu II, the outcome of it, and the decisions that he took unilaterally, was it based on the core principle of chieftaincy, which is customary? Did Otumfuo show interest in knowing whether Aninchema Bugurago Azoka was customarily enskined or installed? And the answer is no, he wasn't customarily enskined or installed. And we'll not go deep into all that. I've already written an article, right, about the Kusasi custom in 1958. So it gives you a clue. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for your time. We've done more than 2 hours, and I will end tonight's program here. And hopefully I will stay in touch, and then when necessary, you will hear from me again. Thank you so very much, and God bless you all. Good night and peace.